In an industry with an increasing reliance on CGI, it's actually kind of refreshing to see a movie that sticks with practical effects for the most part. Wait, did we say refreshing? We meant terrifying. You might be surprised how many of Pennywise's unsettlings are due simply to top-notch prosthetics, costume design, and the frighteningly malleable body of Bill Skarsgard. We'll talk about what makes Pennywise so terrifying and reveal which of these nightmare creatures is his true form. Come on, you didn't think he was really a clown now, did ya? That would be crazy. You know what's almost as scary as an extra-dimensional nightmare clown which feeds off your own fears? Overuse of CGI. This is something It Chapter 2 director Andy Muschietti knows quite well, and why he prefers to use practical effects whenever possible. He grew up watching 80s horror movies and admits he has a weakness for that era of special effects, but he's not afraid to add some digital additions whenever necessary. Muschietti got lucky that Pennywise actor Bill Skarsgard is more than just talented at performing. He's also apparently a master at manipulating his face in creepy ways. That unsettling Pennywise grin? Yeah, that's all Skarsgard. Apparently, he's been making that face since he was about 10 years old and used to do it in order to frighten his younger brother. In It Chapter 1, we see a glimpse of Pennywise with deep blue eyes instead of his normal yellowish ones, and those are just Skarsgard's everyday piercing blue eyes. Muschietti was going to digitally create the effect of Pennywise keeping one eye still while rolling the other one around, but Skarsgard said there was no need. Yeah, even that is something Skarsgard can just do on his own. It Chapter 2 doesn't include as much lore and world building as some fans would have liked, but we do know that the creature haunting Derry is more than just Pennywise the Dancing Clown. It's a shapeshifter, and Pennywise is just one of its many, many forms designed to scare its victims. But what does it look like in its natural state? Well, its default physical form is that of a massive spider, or at least that's the way most human brains perceive it. Sadly, our mortal minds aren't really designed for being able to analyze ancient eldritch monsters, so a big scary spider's the best thing we can come up with. It is usually referred to as a male, but in the book it's revealed the creature is pregnant. Maybe that means it is actually a female, or perhaps these creatures just play by different rules than we do. Some people think any amount of spiders is way too many, but even those of us who don't generally fear our eight-legged friends were overwhelmed by the spiders in It Chapter 2. We definitely like to thank whoever came up with the clown-spider hybrid for combining two common fears into an absolute abomination. But hey, don't think of it as spider legs sprouting from a severed head. Think of it as this creature just expressing its true form. Sorry, we tried, but it's still really creepy. In the 1990s It miniseries, this creature's spider form looks more like a freaky spider crab monster. We've also seen it become everything from a scary painting to someone afflicted with leprosy. One of these frightening forms we got to see early in the trailer for It Chapter 2, and that is sweet old Mrs. Kersh, played by Joan Gregson. At first, she seems like a sweet old lady who just happened to move into the old home of Beverly Marsh, but of course she later turned out to be just another form of it. But fun fact, Stephen King named the character Mrs. Kersh after director Irvin Kershner. He was directing Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back while Stanley Kubrick was working on The Shining, another movie based on a Stephen King novel. King was inspired by Kershner, which, considering how nightmarish Mrs. Kersh is kind of a dubious honor. As we mentioned earlier, it takes the form of whatever it thinks will scare its victims, which is why it often appears as something different to different people. Most of us wouldn't think little Georgie's very frightening, but for his older brother Bill, who knows he's gone, it's pretty terrifying to see that little yellow raincoat. Most of us would find lepers more pitiable than terrifying, but not if you're a germaphobe like Eddie. Although what we saw that leper doing with Eddie's mom in Chapter 2 is enough to give anybody nightmares. So if it is really a giant spider, why does it spend so much time masquerading as a clown? Well, one reason is probably because Pennywise is considered universally unsettling. So he's a safer choice than a giant spider if you want to frighten the most amount of humans. In the book, it's mentioned that Pennywise is the monster's favorite form, which means that even though it literally feeds on fear, it can't resist clowning around every now and then. Skarsgard took this aspect of the creature to heart when it came time to portray the iconic clown, and tries to make it seem as though it is truly enjoying its time as Pennywise. Thanks to practical effects, Pennywise does look pretty scary, even when he's having a great time, especially due to one of the few digital effects used to enhance his appearance. Bill Skarsgard does wear some fake teeth to portray Pennywise, and he even used them to be unsettling behind the scenes. When filming for Chapter 2 wrapped, he wordlessly popped them out of his mouth and handed them over to director Andy Muschietti, who took them home and still has them to this day, because that is definitely not weird at all. But to really capture Pennywise's giant nightmare grin, digital effects did have to be used. Even when his smile grows absurdly large, the special effects team at least maintains Skarsgård's actual eyes to create a small connection between the creature and the audience. Now, aren't those some eyes you could just get lost in? Not only is the director focused on scary practical effects, but Bill Skarsgard is as well. He was determined to do as many of his own stunts as possible, which involves a lot of jumping, fighting, and general exhausting behavior. This resulted in him frequently becoming tired on set, but he's not a guy afraid to suffer for his art. Skarsgård is a great foundation for a frightening face thanks to all of his, talents. But he needed some prosthetics to help him out. The goal was to make Pennywise appear more childlike, which both ties into the idea that this is it having a great time and makes him look even creepier. Prosthetic pieces were designed to make Skarsgård's face appear rounder and more full, and the fake teeth help him with an exaggerated smile. In fact, children were one of Skarsgård's primary sources of inspiration. We mentioned earlier that he liked to use his unsettling grin to scare his siblings, but he also admits to noting how his younger sibling would run in fear. He studied how children swing their arms quickly when they run in a way that looks comical to adults. Skarsgård incorporated this effect into his performance, and the result is deeply unsettling. Of course, Skarsgård also did research on the part, but his sources are pretty surprising. Yes, he watched the 1990 miniseries, but was determined not to emulate the performance of former Pennywise Tim Curry. Instead of analyzing Curry's performance, Skarsgård studied footage of wild animals in order to get into the head of it. This actually makes a lot of sense, considering its true form and motivation in the movie. It is trying to hunt its prey, so Skarsgård closely watching predators like hyenas and bears in action helped him get into the right mindset for the role. But he did look at other clown-like characters, notably Heath Ledger as the Joker in The Dark Knight. But even though Pennywise and Joker both pull off the crazy clown aesthetic, Skarsgård realized the Joker is a real person. Well, a real fictional person at least. But since Pennywise is a terrifying extra-dimensional entity, there was only so much he could take from Ledger's incredible performance. Most actors try to humanize their characters, even when they're the worst of the worst. But taking on the role of Pennywise was completely different, because Skarsgård had to work to make him as inhuman as possible. Even his wardrobe was specifically designed to make him look timeless and less than human in terms of his proportions. In the book, Pennywise is compared to characters like Bozo the Clown, Clarabelle the Clown, and Ronald McDonald, but in It Chapter 1 and 2, his clothes were inspired by the Victorian, Elizabethan, and Renaissance eras, complete with puffy sleeves and pantaloons. This gives him an eerie silhouette and adds to his inhuman appearance. As far as prepping for the role in the first movie, Bill Skarsgård says he couldn't do too much beforehand. He had to actually get into the costume, put on the makeup, and look at himself in the mirror before he could work on developing how Pennywise would speak, act, and move. In order to become it, he had to get the look down first. But what was it like stepping into those clown shoes for a second time? According to Skarsgård, he wasn't sure how he would rediscover the aspects of Pennywise, which worked so well the first time around. To make it even more difficult, Skarsgård was well aware of how many people were affected by Pennywise after the first movie, so he knew he had a lot to live up to. But he claims that when he sat down for a read-through, the character instantly came flooding back to him as if it was just yesterday he was working on Chapter 1. Apparently, being Pennywise is now intuitive, and we can't really tell if we should be impressed or intimidated by that fact. In fact, he says the biggest change this time around was getting to work with big-name adult actors instead of the child stars from the first movie. Skarsgård was kept isolated from the kids for the most part, so their reactions to seeing him in costume would be genuine. But the adults had their own set of issues to deal with on set, like Jessica Chastain, who had to deal with being doused with 4,500 gallons of fake blood while on set. She claims that this, rather than Pennywise, was the scariest thing to happen to her on set. The viscous liquid completely obscured her vision, and after the camera stopped rolling, she was left sticky and miserable, much to the amusement of her much cleaner co-stars. No matter which form he takes, there's no denying that it manages to be utterly terrifying. And the fact that your fear is what it wants to feed on is all the more unsettling. Pennywise is a master of fear, but which one of his terrifying transformations chilled you to the core? Come on, just confess your greatest fears in the comments section. What could go wrong? Before you turn on that night light, just in case, make sure to click on the subscribe button for more videos from CBR. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time.